The Zorvani dominion prided itself on control of thought, of space, of emotion. Their worlds were sculpted in symmetry, their traditions dictated by cold efficiency. And when the humans arrived, they saw only chaos disguised as adaptability. Ambassador Elara Myles had not been invited. Her arrival on Orbital Outpost 9 was sanctioned through interstellar protocol. Not welcome. The Zorvani command, especially High Strategist Volek, considered her presence a provocation. She stepped from the dropship alone. No weapons, no armor, just the dark navy uniform of the Terran Peace Council and a translator node at her temple. Her breathing was steady, gaze level. Every Zorvani present, even the guards clad in kinetic reactive plating, flinched at her composure. "You are not required," Volek said without preamble. His voice filtered through the translator as a serrated monotone. Elara offered no emotion. "Your frontier skirmishes with the Ashen have displaced 2 human colonies. Earth is within its right to send a representative. This is not your war." "No," she replied evenly. "It's becoming yours and ours." They led her through the steel arteries of the station. No introductions. No seats offered. She walked silently through sterile corridors, watched by sensor drones and the unnerving black lenses of Zorvani soldiers. Inside the central chamber, walls pulsed with thermal data and orbital fleet routes. She stood as a single biological blip in a room designed for control. Volek's fingers tapped once on the table's glass surface. "You represent a species that has survived by accident." Elara didn't blink. "You mistake adaptation for luck. That's a common error." Another Zorvani, lesser in rank but bolder in tone, snarled. "You threaten us with presence. That itself is aggression." Elara clasped her hands behind her back. "If you consider standing unarmed before you a threat, then I accept the compliment." The silence snapped. Without warning, a plasma bolt struck her in the side. She staggered but didn't fall. A second shot hit her chest, then a third, fourth. By the time the 7th slammed into her abdomen, she was on her knees. Her face remained blank, eyes locked on Volek's. Then her body hit the floor with a dull thud. Volek's command was immediate. Dispose of the remains. Send formal protest to the Terran Council. Accuse her of espionage. The guards dragged her away. Blood left a trail from the conference room across the pristine alloy floor. The med officer scanned her. No life signs. "Seal the body chamber," Volek said. "She'll serve as an example. Even these soft creatures must know limits." The chamber was dark, cold, silent. Her body was dumped onto a flat slab. Internal diagnostics from the Zorvani scanner faded to black. Then a finger twitched. Tissue began to pulse faintly. Beneath torn fabric, the wounds weren't bleeding anymore. Subdermal lattices hummed to life. Capillaries rewove. A rib snapped itself back into alignment with an audible pop. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Elara's eyes opened. She lay still, analyzing her own condition. Pain registered in degrees, but secondary protocols had engaged. Nanite dispersal was at 60%. Emergency clotting complete. Core system stable. Her body, a marvel of Terran resilience, was rebuilding itself. She sat up, took one breath, then another. Memory returned in frames. The conference, Volek's words, the moment before the first shot. Her expression remained unchanged. No rage, just calculation. She stood. Her boots echoed on the floor as she approached the chamber's exit. It was locked, reinforced. She placed one hand on the metal. The Zorvani had designed it to withstand kinetic bursts. They hadn't considered enhanced human ligature strength. Her fingers curled, metal bent. The door groaned as pressure built, edges warping under stress. The reinforced lock snapped with a metallic shriek. She stepped into the hallway, leaving the door hanging crooked behind her. Security alarms blared. Red lights bathed the corridor. Guards approached, weapons raised, confused. She ignored them. Her path was forward. Volek received the alert with disbelief. "The human is alive." "She tore open the chamber door," said the officer. "We saw it on feed." Volek leaned forward. "Show me." On the screen, Elara walked calmly. Blood still stained her uniform, but her posture was relaxed, controlled, not vengeful. Volek watched in silence, then whispered, "That was not supposed to be possible." She kept walking, every step silent, deliberate, toward the very facility that tried to execute her. Every step forward reinforced the failure of Zorvani's certainty. What they had deemed finished now walked their halls. And she wasn't limping. Internal diagnostics displayed in Elara's mind like a heads-up overlay. Fractured ribs mended at 76%, lung integrity at 92%, plasma residue neutralized. Pain still echoed through her nervous system, but it was cataloged, manageable. Her training had taught her to think through agony, not fight it. Two guards turned the corner, weapons raised. She raised her hands. "Don't." They fired. The first pulse struck her shoulder, spinning her halfway. The second grazed her neck. She closed the distance in 3 strides. One hand gripped a weapon, twisted. Bones cracked in the guard's wrist. The other she disabled with a knee to the chest, crumpling his breath. Neither would die. That mattered. She picked up neither weapon. Alarms elevated. Overhead, automated defense turrets extended from the ceiling but paused. Biometric scans ran again. The system recognized her as deceased. No valid target. She kept walking. Her muscles moved with mechanical grace, driven by memory and neural overlays. Project Prometheus had been shelved publicly, condemned as unethical. But the Terran Council had kept a few assets. Not soldiers, envoys. Chosen for their will to endure, not their capacity to destroy. Zorvani cameras track her progress. Volek stood frozen in disbelief. "That thing is not a diplomat." "It speaks like one," his lieutenant replied. "And it doesn't kill." She survived 7 plasma rounds and restrained herself. She is a weapon. She is a message. Volek didn't reply. He watched as she reached the blast door leading to the facility's training wing. Reinforced titanium. Sealed. Meant to deny entry to anything short of orbital artillery. She placed one hand on the seam. Fingers spread. Grip adjusted. Pressure applied. No fanfare. No war cry. Just force. The metal resisted. Then groaned. Weld points shrieked as internal supports bent. The center frame warped, twisted outward. She stepped back and yanked it fully loose. It hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the training wing. Elara stepped through. Zorvani warriors, trainees and officers alike, stood in the main arena. Half-raised weapons. Unsure. She looked over them. None fired. Volek's voice crackled through overhead speakers. "State your purpose." She didn't look up. "It has not changed. You breached a secure door. You closed it on diplomacy." One warrior lunged forward, halberd blade crackling with sonic current. She sidestepped, caught his wrist, and dropped him without striking. Another charged. She swept his legs, disarmed him, and stood over both, offering neither pain nor triumph. More step back. "I'm not here to punish you," she said. "I am here because you mistook peace for weakness, and I need you to understand your mistake." From behind mirrored glass, Zorvani analysts argued. She should be in critical condition. No adrenaline spikes. No erratic vitals. She's choosing restraint. Back in the arena, Elara approached the central command table. She sat at the chair they had denied her hours earlier. Blood still streaked her sleeves. Her voice was steady. "Resume talks." No one moved. Volek hesitated. She could see him through the glass now, silent, thoughtful. The fury had drained from his face, replaced by calculation. "You should be dead." "I'm not." "Why didn't you retaliate?" "You opened fire in fear." "I walked through it." Another pause. "You are not just human. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the fastest. But I'm built to survive. That's what humans do. It's why we're still here." A lower officer leaned forward. "What are you made of?" "Resolve." None of them laughed. They weren't sure if they should. Elara folded her hands on the table. "I'm not unique. You just didn't see what we send when peace matters most." Volek motioned to cut the alarms. The red lights dimmed. Turrets retracted. She let out a single breath. Her heartbeat slowed. Minutes passed. No one attacked. No one ordered her removed. The warriors in the arena slowly lowered their weapons. Some approached the bent door and studied it as if seeing it for the first time. One asked quietly, "How many more like you?" Elara met his eyes. "Enough." He stepped back, said nothing more. The Zorvani were silent. Not defeated, recalibrating. They had seen human technology before. They had seen Terran fleets, data, structures. But never this. Not endurance like this, housed in a form so fragile, walking through death without vengeance. They had tested her to destruction, and she had responded by sitting back down. Now, they would have to listen. The Zorvani command chamber dimmed as new data streamed in. Biometrics from Elara's body still pulsed across their tactical overlays, defying every projection. Neural stability, cardiac function, tissue repair, all confirmed. No human baseline accounted for it. No recorded species displayed recovery of that magnitude without external machinery. Yet she sat, calm and collected, in their training wing. Volek stared at the feed. She is not military. Official records confirm diplomatic status, one analyst replied. Clearance Alpha, 9 under the Terran Peace Council. Then Earth lied, or Earth expected violence, and prepared for it without responding in kind. He turned away from the screens. There was no precedent in their doctrine for a threat that chose not to retaliate. In the training wing, the tension had not eased. Elara remained seated, her hands resting lightly on the table. Warriors who'd once trained against holographic enemies now stood frozen, unsure if they were witnessing a diplomatic breach or a silent conquest. Another officer stepped forward, slowly, weapon holstered. "What happens next?" "I ask again to resume negotiations," she said, "and you decide if that door I opened was a beginning or a warning." Volek stepped through the threshold a moment later. No guards. Just him. He faced her across the table. "We underestimated you. You tried to eliminate me. And still you're here." "I am." He sat across from her, hesitant. "You say this strength is not uncommon among your kind. I say strength takes many forms. Mine is resilience. Others would have responded differently. More forcefully, more destructively." Volek looked at the bent slab of alloy lying near the entrance. "You could have killed them. I didn't. Why? Because my mission was peace. It didn't change just because I was shot." Volek leaned back, measuring her words. To endure pain is one thing. To endure insult without retaliation, that is alien to us. Elara's eyes held his. "Then perhaps you're not ready for peace. Because it requires more than strength. It demands discipline." Zorvani officers observing the exchange remained silent. Every surveillance drone transmitted the same truth. A single human diplomat, grievously wounded, had infiltrated the most secure sector of their installation without escalation. And now she was offering peace again. Volek interlocked his claws. "What do you want from us?" "A ceasefire with the Ashen, a mutual corridor for Terran mediation, and a formal withdrawal from colonized territories that intersect with civilian human settlements." His eyes narrowed. "You come here alone and make demands as if this display entitles you to dictate policy." "No," she replied. "I come here to remind you that your assumptions are flawed, that you cannot calculate humanity through the lens of conventional force. We are machines. We adapt, and when pushed, we respond. Not always how you expect." He remained quiet. "You believe killing me would assert dominance," she continued. "Instead, it revealed your fear. Now the question is whether you let that fear define you or evolve beyond it." Volek stood, walked a slow circle behind her. "Not a predator, an analyst. You said others like you exist. They do. Soldiers, defenders, scientists, explorers, survivors. We don't tailor strength to war alone. We embed it into purpose." He paused. "You could be lying. I was clinically dead. I revived. I crossed your lines without force. If I were lying, I would have left bodies behind me." He stopped walking. "You've made your point, but you've also destabilized our doctrine." "That was never my intent," she said. "But perhaps your doctrine required destabilization." The doors to the training wing hissed open again. More Zorvani entered. Not guards, but command staff. None carried weapons. They took positions along the perimeter, watching her. not as a threat, but as a variable they had never encountered. Elara looked around the room. You can try to isolate this moment. Contain it. Pretend it was an anomaly. But it won't work. You've seen something you can't unsee. A human who survived your worst and didn't hate you for it. Volek's voice lowered. What do you call this philosophy? We call it being human. A silence followed, but it was different now. Not tension. Consideration. The kind that comes before acceptance. You'll have your corridor, Volek said finally. A temporary agreement. The council will send envoys. Elara nodded. And the displaced civilians? We will begin withdrawal. Conditional. Terms can be settled in proper talks. This was the preamble. He studied her once more. We've met thousands of species. Fought half of them. Conquered more. And yet, she finished the thought for him. This is the first time one didn't break where you expected. Yes. She stood. Pain lingered in her posture, but strength had returned to her steps. Then let's not waste the opportunity. News of what occurred on Outpost 9 spread faster than official reports. Surveillance footage leaked within hours. Unverified, but impossible to refute. A Terran diplomat shot 7 times. A human tearing open reinforced infrastructure. No retaliation. No demands for surrender. Just an insistence to resume peace talks. On the Zorvani homeworld, reaction was fractured. Military circles called it psychological warfare. Scientific enclaves debated the biological plausibility. But the ruling assembly found themselves facing a single unavoidable conclusion. Their understanding of humanity was outdated. The Terran Council responded with efficiency. Envoys arrived within 48 hours, escorted not by fleets, but civilian ships bearing data archives, medical supplies, and diplomatic codices. There was no posturing. They weren't negotiating from a position of weakness. They simply no longer needed to prove their position at all. Elara remained on station during the transition. Her wounds were still healing, but she declined further assistance. Observers noted how Zorvani personnel had begun to regard her with a new form of respect, not based in fear, but in recognition. She was summoned once more to speak before the assembly overseeing external treaties. This time, the chamber was filled. There were no weapons visible. The air was different. One elder addressed her directly. You withheld your true capabilities. What? I withheld nothing, she answered. You assumed we were fragile. I simply allowed the assumption to play out. Another asked. You could have retaliated. You chose not to. That decision changes more than our opinion of you. It alters the balance between us. She didn't argue. She didn't need to. An analyst presented his findings. Her systems were augmented, yes, but the core of her survival lies not in her enhancements, but in her biology's adaptability. Human regenerative capacity, when assisted by minimal augmentation, produces outcomes we considered fiction. But she didn't survive by regeneration alone, a strategist added. She survived because she refused to let death be the end of her mission. There it was, the heart of the matter. Zorvani doctrine equated survival with strategic preservation. Humanity equated it with continuation of purpose, even after defeat. Later, Volek approached her in private. He no longer carried the air of superiority. His tone had changed. When we first encountered humans, we noted your rapid advancement, your unpredictability. But we believed those were symptoms of volatility, not design. We were never designed, she replied. We grew into what we had to become. You forced us to rethink how we measure threat and value. You altered our interpretation of what peace requires. She inclined her head. Then my mission is complete. Volek nodded slowly. You frightened us more by surviving than any weapon could have. And yet we can't dismiss you. That balance is powerful. That balance is why I'm alive. On Earth, when the Council received the full debrief, they made no announcement. No celebration. The incident was marked internally, documented in classified files with a single line under results. Ceasefire initiated. Diplomatic presence established. Human deterrence confirmed. The HFY directive, classified beneath layers of protocol, was never about conquest. It was a contingency built around one idea, that when confronted with extinction, humanity would not just fight back, it would refuse to vanish. Elara Myles was proof that humanity's greatest weapon was not firepower or fleets, but refusal. Not one Zorvani had died during her return from death. Not one facility was sabotaged. Yet their entire strategic worldview was recalibrated. Within weeks, Terran and Zorvani representatives sat together in shared chambers. Disagreements continued, but were managed without escalation. The Ashen conflict began to wind down as neutral zones were recognized and enforced. No further incidents were recorded. Across independent systems, word spread of what the Terrans had done. Not invaded, not conquered, survived. Some species scoffed, claiming it was an isolated incident. Others paid closer attention, and some began to wonder. If a single unarmed diplomat could walk through execution and return with diplomacy intact, what else might humanity be capable of when it chose not to be restrained? Elara was reassigned 3 months later. Her body bore the faint echoes of trauma, but her presence had only grown in weight. Her new assignment was confidential, but everyone knew the meaning behind it. She was being sent to a more dangerous frontier, because now everyone understood. When humans came with words instead of weapons, you were being given a final chance to choose how you wanted to be remembered. She stood aboard the transport ship, alone again, staring out at the stars. In silence, she prepared, not to fight, but to endure once more. Because in a vast galaxy full of empires and war machines, only one species had proven that survival could be an act of defiance, and diplomacy, an expression of unshakable will. Humanity did not win by overpowering. It won by outlasting, and that would never be forgotten.